Daniel's four beasts are four fallen angels who come out of the abyss in the end times, not ancient kingdoms. And today we're going to assert this amazing theory with evidence that you have never seen before. Daniel's four beasts, one of whom is the beast, come out of the abyss. How did they get in there in the first place? And who are Daniel's four beasts? The lion, bear, leopard, and fourth terrifying beast. Well, biblical scholars have asked this question for years. The simple answer has been that they're the same empires that scholars believe represent Daniel's statue of Daniel 2, Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. But the text of Daniel 7 gives us a big clue that they are different. And this is something you probably haven't seen. After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a fourth beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. Please notice something, that when the fourth terrifying beast comes out of the sea, which we know or are going to find out is the abyss, it comes out with its 10 horns already formed. The 10 horns are already in place. Yet, the 10 horns are equivalent to the 10 toes of the statue in Daniel 2. And those toes don't form in that statue's vision until the end times. In fact, they haven't formed yet. So that means that in order for the beast to come out of the sea with its 10 horns in place, it hasn't come up out of Daniel's sea just yet either. Now, this isn't to say that the beasts aren't associated in some ways with Babylon, Persia, and Greece. We'll learn that later. But it does mean that they aren't those empires in a physical sense. I used to believe that they were those empires, but that is a very physical explanation. But the Bible is not just physical, it's spiritual as well. In Deuteronomy 32:8, we are told that the nations were given to the sons of God after the Tower of Babel. And in Daniel 10, we encounter two of these demonic angelic princes, the Prince of Persia and the Prince of Greece. And Ephesians 6, we learn our struggle is against these same rulers and authorities in heavenly places. So those four beasts might have more to do with the spiritual realm than just the physical. And the fact that they come out of the abyss is an exciting topic that we're talking about today, and we're starting right now. One of the first questions we need to ask ourselves is, why does Daniel have two visions? The vision of Nebuchadnezzar's statue in Daniel 2 and Daniel's vision of the four beasts in Daniel 7. If the two visions are the same, why repeat all this same information in a second vision? There may be several reasons, but perhaps they actually represent two different time periods. The statue being in the past and the four beasts being in the future. Now, let's show you something you probably haven't noticed before from the vision of the four beasts. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions of his head as he lay in his bed. Then he wrote down his dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and four great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. What we want to discuss is this idea of the beasts coming up out of the sea. And notice it's all four that come out of the same sea. There are several scholarly interpretations as to what the sea represents. We've expressed these ideas on this channel before. One is that it's the Mediterranean Sea, the Great Sea. Another is that it represents the Gentile nations. We see this in Revelation as Mystery Babylon sits on many waters. However, we need to consider this other verse from Revelation about the two witnesses. And when they had finished their testimony, the beast that rises from the bottomless pit, or the abyss, will make war on them and conquer them and kill them. Here we are told the beast rises out of the abyss. So, is the sea of Daniel 7, where they arise from, the same as the abyss or bottomless pit? The beast arises out of only one place. So this seems to imply the sea in Daniel is the same as the abyss. In the Bible, the abyss is a deep or boundless place. In the Hebrew, this concept is conveyed by the word tehom, meaning deep. This was the primordial water or chaos out of which God created the whole world that he later called good and very good. The word tehom also can refer to the depths of the sea, so the sea and the abyss are related. Even in today's secular and scientific world, the bottom of the sea is often called the abyss by scientists. So not only is it logical that the sea that Daniel's four beasts come out of is the abyss or bottomless pit, it has to be. If the fourth beast comes out of the sea, and in Revelation 11 we learn he comes out of the abyss, then the sea equals the abyss. And if one of the beasts comes out of the abyss, then all of them do. And that's a pretty incredible finding. The reason it's incredible is what it implies about who the four beasts are, because the abyss is a holding area for demons. We see this throughout the New Testament. In Luke 8, Jesus cast the legion of demons out of a man, and they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. Luke 8:31. The abyss is a place that demons fear and try to avoid. And as we just saw in Revelation 11:7, the beast comes out of the abyss. Satan is eventually chained up in the abyss after losing the battle of Armageddon. And I saw an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key to the abyss, and holding in his hand a great chain. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent who is the devil or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss and locked and sealed it over him to keep him from deceiving the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were ended. So Satan is placed there in Revelation 20. Then, of course, there's Revelation 9, where demonic locusts come out of the abyss. So the abyss, in all instances, is a holding area for demons and angels. Peter refers to this in 2 Peter 2:4 and Jude in Jude 1:6. Angels who disobeyed in the days of Noah appear to be kept there. And in Enoch 10:14, we learn that the number of the demonic beings held there is steadily increasing. That is why the demons in Luke 8 begged Jesus not to send them to the abyss, because more and more demons are being placed there. Knowing it is a holding area for demons implies that all four of the beasts are demons or demonic beings of some sort, since they come out of the abyss. Let's say that again, because it is a revolutionary understanding. This may be the first time on any video or any scholarly writing that this has been suggested. If Daniel's four beasts come out of the abyss, then they are demonic spiritual beings. Based on their appearance, this shouldn't be surprising. They are chimeric animals made up of blends of other animals in the same way the cherubim are also chimeric. You know, you have a lion with wings, you got a leopard with wings, etc. But how did they get into the abyss in the first place? And how did the beast of Revelation get there? These are really important questions every Christian should be asking. Also, who releases them? Why are they released? And when are they released? Our end-time views depend on our answers to this group of questions. First, let's look at when the four beasts were imprisoned in the abyss. This will then give us an idea of when they might be released, and in order to know when they were imprisoned, we need to know why. And unfortunately, we aren't told directly, but their relationship to Babylon, Persia, and Greece makes me wonder if they were the sons of God in charge of those nations historically. Let's examine this further. In Deuteronomy 32, we learn that as part of mankind's punishment for the Tower of Babel revolt against God, God assigned the Gentile nations to the sons of God, who were supernatural beings. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the numbers of the sons of God. So supernatural beings are controlling the nations. Now we realize if you use a King James Bible, this verse reads the sons of Israel, not the sons of God. The Masoretic text that the Old Testament is based on does read sons of Israel, not sons of God. The Masoretic text was completed about 1,000 years ago. However, in the late 1940s, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, and the ancient 2,500-year-old texts of books like Deuteronomy were somewhat different from the Masoretic text. Not a lot, but a little bit. One of those differences was this verse, Deuteronomy 32:8. That's when scholars realized that the original text, the older text, read the sons of God. The King James, however, was written in the 1600s, and they didn't have knowledge of the Dead Sea Scrolls at that time. So this ministry favors the older and likely more accurate reading, the supernatural wording found in Bibles like the NASB and ESV today. And of course the New Testament supports this view, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places. The Apostle Paul supports that what we see physically in this world is ruled by supernatural forces. And we see the book of Daniel supporting this view as well. In Daniel 10, the messenger angel is detained from giving Daniel a vision by an evil angel. Later, we are told the title of the evil angel is the Prince of Persia. And we are told later that another evil angel is coming, the Prince of Greece. These happen to be, as we mentioned before, two of the empires that most associate with the four beasts, Babylon, Persia, Greece, etc. Is that coincidence? Well, maybe not. In the book of Revelation, chapter 17, we see a similar association between empires and rulers, possibly spiritual rulers. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come, and when he does come, he must remain a little while. For the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. In this passage, we see 7 mountains. In the Bible, mountain most often can be a symbol for empire, and these 7 empires are associated with 7 kings. That makes sense, empire, king. The 7 empires, or 7 heads of the beast, have been suggested to be the 7 empires that persecuted Israel: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, and the Islamic Caliphate. This is pretty standard, and many, if not a majority of scholars, now probably support this view. And notice, some of these same empires that we're already discussing, Babylon, Persia, and Greece, are included in both lists. Up until the time of this video, most have associated the 7 kings with 7 historical kings, like Pharaoh for Egypt, Nebuchadnezzar for Babylon, etc. And maybe, just maybe, that is what it means. But perhaps these are supernatural kings, as in Daniel 10, the Prince of Persia, the Prince of Greece, etc. Maybe the 7 kings in Revelation 17 are sons of God who were assigned to these 7 empires. Notice the beast in Revelation 17 was, is not, but will become the 8th king. How Was he in the past, then wasn't, yet would come again? This is a question scholars have asked, and very few have good answers. Perhaps in the middle, this king was in the abyss, and then would come out of the abyss. This would mean, as a spiritual ruler or son of God, he ruled an empire in the past, then was sent to the abyss, and then he would come out of the abyss to reign once more. And as we have seen, the beast comes out of the abyss. And from this we concluded he is a supernatural ruler. And since Revelation 17 tells us he belongs to the seven, or is of the seven, as some translations say it, well, it makes sense then that all seven were supernatural angelic kings controlling and influencing the earthly kings of those earthly empires. This is a new theory, but it's totally consistent with Scripture, and it's the only theory, I think, that makes sense of this crazy verse in Revelation 17. If this new view is accurate, it would mean that each king or supernatural being reigned for a time and then was sent to the abyss in punishment for their sins against Israel. Did you notice it said 5 have fallen? Look what Exodus has to say about God punishing these other gods. For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and on the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. So it's obvious that God punishes the sons of God, who rule the nations, and he punishes them for their behavior. Our theory then is, as of Revelation 17, when John tells us 5 have fallen, that means 5 were in the abyss: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Greece. And one that was Rome, and one was yet to come, and that would be the Islamic Empire. Then John tells us the beast that is coming was, from his perspective that day, and is not. That means it could be any of the first 5, but could not be Rome, or could not be the Caliphate. Amazing, because those two are the two empires that most think will resurface. But John tells us specifically it can't be those two, because the beast that's coming was prior to John's day. Let's say that again. The beast has to be one of the first 5 angelic kings: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Greece. Since Isaiah, in Isaiah 31:8, among other verses, and Micah in Micah 5:5-6, refers to this beast as the Assyrian, that makes him the most likely candidate for the beast. If you have a problem with this interpretation, please review the last 5 minutes of this video so you can see the logic in this reasoning. So when was the Assyrian beast placed in the abyss? Likely around 609 BC, when it fell to Babylon. So it's been in that abyss for quite a long time. Now let's keep that all in mind and move on and ask a few more questions about the other 4 beasts. How and when are the 4 beasts released? Now we know from the beginning of the video that the 4th beast comes out of the abyss with his horns in place, which tells us that this is an end-time release. But what does the book of Daniel say about that moment, the moment that they're released? Behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and the 4 great beasts came out of the sea, different from one another. So something known as the 4 winds of heaven stir up the abyss. What are these winds? We know from Hebrews, he makes his angels winds, and his ministers a flame of fire. So likely, the winds of heaven are heavenly angels stirring up the abyss and allowing the beasts to be released. These 4 winds of heaven are mentioned in other places in the Bible. In Zechariah, they're mentioned in association with 4 sets of colored horses that likely are the same as the 4 horsemen of Revelation 6. So our best guess is that they are released one at a time, along with each of the horsemen. The beasts come out with the horsemen, but that is only a guess. These 4 beasts are also associated with nations. nations that will occupy the territories of Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Greece, the ones that they once occupied. This is because the sons of God, the angelic beings that are the beasts, are territorial angels. They're associated with specific territories. As Deuteronomy 32:8 suggests, the nations were divided among these sons of God. But how will all this take place and when? The prophet Daniel explains this in Daniel 7, 8, and 11. Click right here to keep watching and discover how the events of the very near future will bring these four beasts onto the scene. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.